This is a continuation of part 3 of this webinar series, Ensuring Access, What Teachers Need to Know About AIM in Louisiana's Curriculum. When considering accessible instructional materials, we always need to consider the format that will be provided. Base the format on the student's skill and the need, the environment in which that format will be utilized, the task in which the format will be required, and the features of the following. First, let's consider enlarged print. Many people order large print textbooks for students who have visual difficulties. Those textbooks typically come in a font size of 18 or 20 and a font style of Sans or APH. Is this font adequate for the student? If not, will additional assistive technology such as a magnification system or a CCTV be required? Also, consider the textbook. Is the large print version especially large, or does it contain multiple volumes? Will an accommodation be needed to help the student carry books on the campus and transport them home? Can the student read the graphics, maps, tables, and diagrams? I once worked with a high school student who needed large print versions of her textbook. Her science textbook was 4 volumes. It was so difficult for her to transport her books around campus that we actually had an extra set of books for home and a set of books for school. In addition, when she had to read a diagram, she had difficulty with the caption or difficulty with the titles within the diagram. So I had to enlarge these on a copy machine. When considering large print, there may be some manual modifications still required to accommodate the student. Also consider the paper quality. For some students, there's an issue with the glare or the type of paper. If so, the student may require a filter. Your vision specialist will be able to provide you with information on tools such as filters and magnifiers. Also consider the margins and the spacing between the words, paragraphs, and sentences. When considering Braille, discuss these issues. Has a functional visual assessment been conducted by a vision specialist or Braille specialist? Does the student read Braille currently, or will the student be a potential Braille reader in the future? These are some issues you need to discuss when talking about Braille: the cognitive or literacy skills of the student, the back to print. Who is going to do this? When are they going to do it? And what's going to happen when that person is not available? Other technology needs when considering Braille is, what does the student need to use when Braille is not available? Most students who use Braille have other assistive technology for an auditory format. Which brings us to our next format, audio. We discussed audio in the previous slide. If an audio format would benefit the student, things that you need to discuss are the devices. There are many options to choose from today. Will you be using a tape, a CD, an MP3 player? There are other options for devices such as a daisy player. A daisy player provides additional information. For example, a student would be able to navigate from a header to a paragraph, or the student might be able to bookmark certain sections of the book. The daisy file would be able to tell the student which page the student is on, and also have other table of content information in which the student could navigate back and forth. This becomes especially useful if the student is asked to recall information or to answer a question. Think about a tape player. If the student had to rewind and find that information, it would be very difficult, even for students who do not have a disability, to be able to locate that information and remember where it was contained. Let's take a look at an example of audio file. I'm going to stop sharing this PowerPoint.
Charles Dickens. Chapter 1. My father's family name being Pirip, and my Christian name Philip, my infant tongue could make of both names nothing longer or more explicit than Pip. So, I called on the authority of his tombstone and my sister, Mrs. Joe Gargery, who married the blacksmith.
Okay, in this example you can see how the text is provided with the text-to-speech that was recorded as an MP3 file. Also notice that the user does not have any control over the rate of speech or how the information will be presented from one page to another. All you can do is go from the beginning to the end. Let's take a listen again, and this time you will not have the advantage of seeing the text. Think about having to listen to the text so that you could remember the information and answer a question afterward.
Fancies regarding what they were like were unreasonably derived from their tombstones. The shape of the letters on my father's gave me an odd idea that he was a square, stout, dark man, with curly black hair. From the character and turn of the inscription, also Georgiana, wife of the above, I drew a childish conclusion that my mother was freckled and sickly. To 5 little stone lozenges, each about 1.5 feet long, which were arranged in a neat row beside their grave, and were sacred to the memory of 5 little brothers of mine who gave up trying to get a living exceedingly early in that universal struggle, I am indebted for a belief religiously entertained that they had all been borne on their backs with their.
Okay, considering what you just heard, how many brothers did Pip have? Do you recall from what you just heard? He had 5. Think of how difficult it would be for a student to have to backtrack through this information to locate that. Let's go back. Or does the student need a combination of formats? Here's an example of enlarged view in a digital format. If you look here at the bottom area of the screen, you will notice that the icons are smaller. At the top area, they have been enlarged using magnification that's freely provided with the computer operating system. We discussed text-to-speech earlier, and let's take another look at text-to-speech by looking at an example from a book from CAST. To explore them. The hyperlink is in your handout. If I wanted to have this sentence read to me, press the button. Whoops. Button. Okay, this is an example of a text-to-speech software program that's provided along with the UDL edition. Notice that I had control over what I wanted read to me. Notice also that as it was being read, there was a blue highlight that helps me to focus on the individual word. If a user only needs 1 or 2 words read to them, they can have that spoken to them. Other features include hyperlinks. In this example, if I hit the word coyote, it would hyperlink to a definition of the coyote, and it would also give me a picture. This example from Text Help also includes a feature for organization. Suppose I wanted to select all of the areas where the coyote could be found. I could highlight that. Whoops. Actually, since it's a hyperlink, I'm having trouble. Highlight this, highlight North America and Central America. And maybe I wanted to highlight some. Here's open prairies. I'll highlight that here as a place. And I just wanted to highlight this information right here. They're usually hidden from sight for some other reason. What I can do is I can press this button and all of my highlights are collected for me. Then I could copy that by clicking here. It's in the clipboard, and I could paste that into a document that I might be preparing for this lesson. So this is an example of how digital text can be more than just useful for auditory purposes. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. I'm going to stop sharing. Back to my document, so be patient. Some other examples that we did not talk about were an example of speech to text. We saw text to speech previously, but in this case, the student is speaking and his voice is controlling the letters that are being written on the page. Speech to text is a nice feature. However, there is a high learning curve. First, the student needs to know how to utilize the speech to text. Also, the computer needs to learn the user's voice. So that may take some time in order to get that prepared with the student. This is an example of word prediction. Here, as the student types the first letter of the word, the computer is predicting a word that may be used, that the student may be trying to type. This would save the student from having to type many letters for students with a physical or fine motor disability. It would also be an advantage for students who are unable to spell, because it would help them by having the word provided for them. Many of you may already be familiar with word prediction when you use your cell phone. Word prediction is a good example of universal design for learning, because a feature that was once provided for people with disabilities is now something that all people are using because our screen size is small, and mostly because the letters or having to type in words on a cell phone can be difficult. There are other format considerations that are not necessarily those formats identified by IDEA. These are format considerations of digital text. First, the use of electronic text. Some students may have difficulty reading typical text because of their issues with cognition or their literacy level. There are now programs that can provide a picture symbol as text is being typed in across the screen. This Rebus type style of presentation can help students. This is an example of color. The use of color may be very important for some students who have a visual disability or other students who have issues with dyslexia. In this example, the background is a dark blue with a light yellow font. When looking at issues of color, you need to test the color, the background, and the font with the student. And for young students, be careful that they're not selecting their favorite color. In order to know whether or not the color is helping them, you actually have to test them by having them read to you. This is an example of a cascading style sheet structure. The use of stylized font structure or cascading style sheets can add to the comprehension, organization, and navigation for students. Many textbooks offer a stylized structure, so you should be familiar with it. If these styles are appropriately tagged by the developer, the organization in the digital file can foster reading programs and keyboard navigation. For example, in this picture, the user could press a key to move from one header to another. The screen reader would alert the user, who may be blind, that the following paragraph applies to the new topic. The cascading style sheet also provides clues to the visual reader and promotes better comprehension and recognition. Finally, when the cascading style sheet structure is viewed in most word processors, it can be viewed as an outline that can collapse or expand between levels, and this could be very helpful for outlining and organization. When we think about accessible instructional material and the definition provided by the IDEA, we note that students who need files from the NIMAC have to have eligibility based on the definition of print disability. If they have a print disability, and we described that earlier, they can receive digital files from the National Instructional Materials Center, or the NIMAC. There are 4 eligibility criteria. Criteria 1 and 2 are fairly straightforward, and they are the most commonly criteria identified in Louisiana. They are already supported by the Louisiana Instructional Materials Center and have been for approximately a decade. If persons are eligible for criteria 1 or 2, they have to have a visual acuity as determined by a competent authority of 20/200 or less in the better eye with correcting glasses, or a diameter of visual field that subtends an angular distance no greater than 20 degrees. Criteria 2 would be persons with visual disability with correction and regardless of the optical measurement, certified by the competent authority as preventing the reading of standard printed material. Criterion 3 is a little more difficult in determining eligibility. The Library of Congress defines this group as persons certified by competent authority as unable to read or unable to use standard printed material as a result of a physical limitation. Categories of disability such as orthopedic, handicapped, other health impaired, and learning disability, right here, AIM Law, Accessible Instructional Materials, which is AIM in Louisiana. This is the Accessible Instructional Materials website for our state. If you click on the Contacts tab and scroll down, you can see that there are 2 links. One is for the district liaisons and one is for the competent authority. In some districts, these are 2 different people, and in other districts, it's the same person. So you just need to check the file. And here you will see a list of the AIM competent authorities for a particular district. If your district does not show the AIM competent authority, it could be that that information has not yet been sent to the state. We try to update the list as soon as we get the information from the districts, I'm sorry. While we're on this page, I also want to bring you to the home page in which you can get just basic information about AIM, within the state and outside of the state. We also have a PD download tab where you can download the information about this webinar and previous webinar or other professional development trainings that have been provided. The NIMAS tab provides information about the NIMAS and the NIMAC that we are discussing just now, and then we have a list of frequently asked questions. And some of you may have some concerns about competent authority or how different print disabilities are identified. So this FAQ might be something that you need to refer to. The assistive technology determination is made with the team and also with the competent authority. And depending on the district procedures, the team may need to complete information that the district has drawn up in order to get that determination on file. Criterion 4 includes persons who are certified by competent authority as having a reading disability resulting from organic dysfunction and of sufficient severity to prevent their reading of printed material in a normal manner. In order for a student to be eligible under Criterion 4, that competent authority must be a medical doctor. On the website that we just looked at, the AIM website, we have a referral form for that medical doctor referral. We also have a referral form for verification of eligibility for the competent authority of the district. Go back. Also, the issue of organic dysfunction can be difficult to describe because so many disabilities have an organic nature. Disabilities that have some kind of reference to the physical components of the body would be one of those considered as organic dysfunction. If you think your student has a print disability resulting from organic dysfunction, you need to discuss this with the student's medical doctor. That referral needs to be included with the student's records. These are some other responsibilities of the LEA. The superintendent is responsible for identifying the district's competent authority. We just showed you where those competent authority contacts have been listed on the AIM website. The district is also, or the LEA is responsible for maintaining the records of the student's eligibility. And finally, the LEA is responsible for informing the state authorized user of student eligibility. People often ask me with eligibility, and the issue comes from the copyright law that we talked about in session 1 of this training. In order for students to receive copies of this file, of the textbook files in a digital format, the authorized user from the state needs to download them from the NIMAC. We need to verify to the NIMAC that that student actually has a print disability. Therefore, when the request is made from the district, they need to prove that the student is certified as having a print disability. This would keep people from ordering books for students who are not print disabled. Regardless of the origin of the print disability, local school systems are still responsible for providing AIM if it is determined to be necessary by the IEP team. So if a student has difficulty accessing the text, whether or not that student qualifies under the term print disability, the district needs to provide accessibility for that student. This is a requirement not of the AIM components under IDEA, but of the accommodations sections of the IDEA. If AIM is required, the LEA must maintain documentation. This documentation needs to be noted on the IEP or on the 504 plan. Currently, our IEP, web IEP, contains 4 fields for AIM. These fields are for Braille, audio, digital, and large print. We also have identified fields for the additional format, such as pictures to text, colored backgrounds, or the cascading style sheets. So if a student needs these, that information will be documented on the IEP. Also, the request for resources from the textbook coordinator must be made in a timely manner so that the student can receive his text. Finally, the information needs to be shared with the special education team, director, or competent authority, the regular education teachers, and then any extension staff, such as the librarian, the computer lab teacher, or the therapist who work with the students so that they can be familiar with the accessible instructional materials required for the student. The team can obtain AIM from many different resources. First, they can request it from the Louisiana Book Depository. If you need to do this, you need to contact your textbook supervisor for your district. The textbook supervisor can order these books through the same system in which the textbook supervisor orders other textbooks for students. If students have blindness or low vision, these materials will be ordered from the Louisiana Instructional Materials Center. You can request that files be downloaded from the NIMAC, from the Louisiana Authorized User, if that student has the eligible print disability for that format. Note that for some students, the files from the NIMAC will not be the most accessible file for that student, especially if the student has issues related to severe cognitive disability or some type of other disability that would keep them from Another place where you can make an order is through bookshare.org, and we have a lot of information from Bookshare, and you can request that information from the AIM website or any of the AT regional centers. Teams can create the information. A lot of information for students with cognitive disabilities are created by teachers using simple e-text or picture symbols. And then finally, you may find other ways to access the information. Before we leave this presentation, I want you to think beyond text. I want you to look at printed textbooks of the future, or what will be the textbook of the future. We've been talking about the accessible and flexible nature of digital text for students with disabilities. But there's so much to think about when we think of how digital text and the new Web 2.0 technologies can actually change our current ideas of how a textbook, core curriculum, the learning environment, and collaboration can be affected. Let's take a look at one of these examples. I'm going to leave the PowerPoint. So as you can see, a textbook that has this type of capability. This is just one example of thinking beyond text. You have hyperlinks in your handouts for examples for math, reading, English, and language arts. I would recommend that you go to those different examples so that you can see the power of digital text and the internet in what we now consider core curriculum. How do these technologies provide options that we've discussed in Universal Design for Learning? And how will curriculum and instruction change because of these technologies? I also have many accessibility references for the state of Louisiana provided in your handout. These are definitely resources that you will want to follow up with and explore. Besides the ones for AIM, our textbook, and the Louisiana Instructional Materials Center, we have the assistive technology links. When you go to the Assistive Technology website, I would like for you to explore the Assistive Technology Regional Center resources listed there. Each center has a different website, and all of the websites have many resources and tools that you can be using. We also have a Universal Design for Learning website. This website will contain a list of the online sessions for professional development that will be available for Universal Design for Learning. We have a Louisiana Access Guide, and I would like to show that to you when I finish this slide so that you can see some of the information available there. We also have a Louisiana Accessibility NING. This NING, similar to a Facebook, allows educators from Louisiana to talk to each other, to have dialogue or networking, so that we can share information, videos, lesson plans, or just ideas. We also have a Louisiana Accessibility presence on Twitter. Typically, 1 or 2 Twitter tweets are provided on that Twitter account so that you can see what's happening in Louisiana accessibility within the state. Also, we have some Universal Design for Learning modules that were developed through CAST, and you can get that. I'm sorry, these are not those modules. These are the modules from CAST itself. PowerPoint. Get back to the internet. So if your screen goes black, just be patient. Oh, I forgot to show this. This is an example of what students with disabilities who have dyslexia may see. As you can see here, there's kind of a shadow on the words. This is another example where it's called rivers, where the words are like split. And when kids view this, sometimes that river moves. This would be an example of shaky text. So I'm going to shake the screen so you can see how a student may be seeing it. How they might be seeing the text. And then here's another example. And you can see how there's like a cycle or a circle in the middle, and that text seems to go in and out. Here's another example where they're not seeing the complete word. All right, let's get to our access guide. This is our access guide for students with significant disabilities. And I wanted to show you this because sometimes for students with very significant cognitive disabilities, you may have difficulty finding resources for those students. This is some examples of materials that were developed from teachers in Louisiana with many resources divided into themes. So here's an example of a module for Ruby Bridges, and there are several folders. There's information for the introduction, there are activities such as Picture This, there's the core material, a description of the activity, the vocabulary, and assessment. So we will just click on one of these folders, and since this is a Word file, I can open it, and that information would be available to me to download for use with my students. So instead of waiting for this to download, let me see if I can, actually we're stuck. So as you can see here, we have an entire lesson plan description and some of the things that you could be using for those students to integrate with the curriculum. If you scroll to the bottom, you will connect to the access guide. This is the access guide for all students, not just students with significant disabilities, but students with more mild moderate disabilities, or some ideas for access for learners who do not have a disability at all. If you click on the All Learners link, what you will see is information about how to include specially designed instruction for individual support within the Louisiana Comprehensive Curriculum. The feature that I want to highlight is the search feature. The way this was designed is so that we could provide information directly to the comprehensive curriculum. So if I select the English Language Arts area and the grade level, I will choose grade 4. And then the topic, I will choose the writing process. And then an activity, daily language, and click search. What I get is a change in the left-hand column of things that I could use for those students. Here is a list of strategies that I might be able to use for that particular activity. Here's a list of many accommodations that I might be able to use, and notice at the bottom there are 2 pages of those accommodations. And this is particular to this grade 4 English language activity, the unit, the writing process. And then here's some technology that I might need to use, I might be able to use with that activity. I don't know why it shifted off to the side. With the technology, we notice that we have actually 2 areas within the table, and that's because we wanted to be able to share the resource with you. So here's one that includes bookshare.org that we referenced today in our AIM. We also have a reference to free text-to-speech tools such as readplease.com, Natural Reader, and WordTalk. So this is available for you to view, and most of the technology resources or most of the suggestions here are free tools. Also, don't forget to go to the websites that we referenced before for the math manipulatives, the reading activity, and the English language art activity. I encourage you to look at other activities in those same resources so that you can use many of the tools with your students. I will be forwarding an evaluation for these 3 webinar sessions. Please complete the evaluations and send them to me at the email contact information listed. Thank you for your participation in this webinar.